Hi, my name's Dominic and I'm from EUROSTUDENT. EUROSTUDENT is a project which compares the characteristics, living conditions and also the time spent on studies of students right across Europe. In the current 5th round of our studies, we compare the situation in 27 European countries. I'm speaking to you after having come back from a big conference in Bucharest looking at the point of equity and equal opportunities in Romanian higher education. One of the conclusions of this very big expert review was that universities and colleges tend to look at the issues of equity and equal opportunities only when they present themselves as problems. They tend to react instead of act. I'm convinced that this can be said of many universities and colleges across the world, also in Scotland. One of the major issues for equal opportunities is widening access, making higher education more inclusive at the first entry barrier. But I would like to suggest that the student movement in Scotland also pays attention to the different points of a person's transition into and through higher education when debating widening access and measures which can be taken to improve it. There are in fact 4 points of transition. The first is before entry to higher education, the second at entry to higher education, the third is during a person's studies, and the fourth is at graduation and the transition period into the job market or into the next phase of studies. For the phase of a student's studies, we call it the third phase, I'd like to emphasise a consequence of being actually rather good at widening access at entry. And this is the problem of ensuring a student's orientation and engagement during their studies. Student engagement is a major determinant of study success. This becomes a challenge if a student sees their studies as just one element of their week, and a challenge for balancing this with other things that are going on. But we think that the share of students with this perception is actually growing, and in fact will grow. In our survey, only 55% of students in Norway, Switzerland, Ireland and Denmark agreed to the statement that their studies were the most important activity of a typical week. This means that 45% of the students in these countries didn't agree with the statement. The share of students who didn't agree with the statement in Finland was even higher, at about 70%. What these countries I've just mentioned do have in common is they're actually very good at widening entry to higher education. We've also found that the share of students who see their studies as less important than other activities in their typical week increases in most countries for students with the following characteristics. For older students, let's say students over 24, for students who've had previous work experience before entering higher education, for students who work currently alongside their studies, and for students with younger children. Therefore, widening participation for these groups will in fact also increase the challenge of ensuring their study success. I'd like to suggest therefore that you pay particular attention to these groups of students and to their attention. Measures you might like to consider to support these groups are such things as buddying systems, pairing up students with different experiences of how to deal with this challenge. Also, just generally to look at communication structures between students and course leaders, whether students are on campus or not. And thirdly, just generally, maybe larger discussions on the study, work-life balance, because this is becoming a major issue for the future. So widening participation in the end, therefore, means looking more holistically at the whole of the transition process and all these different phases in the transition process, so that we see that widening access is just one element of assuring everybody's study success. And that is about assuring quality of higher education. Thank you.